you have been manifesting wrong. Not almost wrong, not sort of wrong, backward. And the worst part, the very thing you are doing to attract what you want is the thing quietly pushing it further away. Napoleon Hill discovered this nearly 100 years ago, and the manifesting gurus quietly buried it. Listen carefully, because this next 60 seconds will change how you see everything. There is a feeling that haunts many people late at night, a quiet ache that doesn't shout, but instead settles into the bones like a slow-weathered change. You have tried everything. You have read the books with their glossy covers and bold promises. You have repeated the affirmations every morning, sometimes aloud, sometimes just in the whisper of your own mind. You have made the vision boards, cutting out images of homes you cannot afford yet, and places you have never seen, placing them where you will see them first thing when you open your eyes. You have done the work on yourself, the inner healing, the shadow work, the letting go of old stories that were never yours to carry. You have tried to stay positive when everything around you felt heavy, when the bills arrived, when the relationship cracked, when the mirror showed you someone who looked tired of hoping. And still, the thing you want most remains just out of reach. Not gone completely. You can still see it there, like a city on the horizon at dusk, close enough to believe in, far enough that your fingers never touch it. And after a while, a quieter thought begins to grow in the back of your mind. Not loud, not dramatic, not the kind of thought that screams for attention. Just heavy. It sounds like this. Maybe this does not work for someone like me. Maybe I am not meant to have that kind of life. Maybe all of this manifesting talk is just another way to sell hope to people who are too tired to notice they are being sold something. If you have felt that thought even once, even in a moment of weakness late at night when no one else was listening, you are not broken. You are not lacking faith. You are not lazy or negative or undeserving. But there is one thing you are doing backward, one law from Napoleon Hill's 20 years of research that has been misunderstood, softened, and quietly forgotten by almost everyone who teaches manifestation today. And the reason it has been forgotten is not complicated. It is not a conspiracy. It is simply because this law asks something of you that is harder than visualization, harder than positive thinking, harder than sitting in silence and waiting for the universe to deliver. It asks you to stop wishing and start burning. It asks you to trade the comfort of hope for the discomfort of action. Most people never notice this. They go their whole lives believing that wanting something deeply is the same as being ready to receive it. But wanting and being ready are not the same thing at all. Wanting is a feeling, warm and soft and safe. Being ready is a state of being, sharp and awake and slightly uncomfortable, like standing at the edge of something you cannot see the bottom of. And one of them changes everything. Napoleon Hill did not begin his work as a motivational speaker, and he was never interested in giving people quick feelings of inspiration that faded by lunchtime. He was a researcher, a curious and patient man who was given a difficult assignment by someone named Andrew Carnegie, a name you may recognize as one of the wealthiest men who ever lived. Carnegie believed that success left clues, patterns that repeated themselves in every person who managed to build something extraordinary, and he wanted Hill to find those clues. So Hill spent more than 20 years interviewing over 500 of the most accomplished people on Earth. He sat with Henry Ford, the man who put the world on wheels. He walked beside Thomas Edison, who seemed to pull light from nothing. He spoke with Theodore Roosevelt, with Alexander Graham Bell, with the Wright brothers who taught humans to fly when everyone said flight was impossible. Hundreds of others who had done what most people said could not be done. And after 2 decades of listening, watching, and quietly taking notes, Hill wrote down what he found. Most people today remember his most famous line, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve," but they almost always forget the sentence that came right before it. And that forgotten sentence is where the trap hides. Hill wrote that a burning desire is the starting point of all achievement. Not a wish, not a hope, not a quiet preference for a slightly better life. A burning desire, the kind that keeps you awake at 2 in the morning, the kind that changes how you breathe when you think about it, the kind that feels less like a choice and more like a hunger. But here is what most people miss, and this is crucial. A burning desire is not the same as wanting something to happen. Wanting is passive. Wanting sits on the couch and says, "I hope this comes to me soon." wanting watches other people succeed and feels a small ache of envy wrapped in a prayer. A burning desire, on the other hand, says something very different. It says, I will move toward this even if I am afraid. I will move toward this even if I fail. I will move toward this even if everyone I love tells me I am being foolish. And that is exactly where the mental trap closes its teeth. Most people today are taught to manifest by focusing only on the feeling of already having what they want. They are told to visualize the outcome so clearly, so vividly, that their emotions believe it is real right now. And there is nothing wrong with that. Visualization is powerful. Feeling your future is important. But here is the backward part, the part no one tells you. If you only visualize the outcome, and you do not also visualize and prepare for the process, then your mind begins to expect a reward without the struggle. And when the struggle comes, as it always does for everyone who ever built anything real, your mind interprets that struggle as a sign that something has gone wrong. So you stop, or you change directions, or you tell yourself that the universe must have something else planned for you, something easier, something that does not hurt this much. And all the while, the thing you wanted is still there, waiting quietly for someone willing to walk through the fire to reach it. This is where everything changes, if you are ready to listen. Let me tell you about a man named Edwin Barnes, because his story holds a secret that most manifestation teachers have forgotten. You probably never heard his name, and that is exactly why his story matters so much. Napoleon Hill considered Edwin Barnes one of the most important examples in all his 20 years of research, not because Barnes was wealthy or famous or born with any unusual advantage, but because he understood something that almost nobody understands about how desire actually transforms into reality. Edwin Barnes had a desire, not a wish, not a passing fantasy, but a desire so strong and so specific that it consumed him from the inside out. He wanted to go into business with Thomas Edison. Think about that for a moment. Thomas Edison was one of the most famous and successful inventors in human history, surrounded by brilliant scientists, wealthy investors, and powerful politicians who would have given almost anything to stand beside him. And Edwin Barnes had none of those things. He had no money, he had no connections, he had no reputation, he had no letter of introduction or famous family name. He had no reason whatsoever to believe that Thomas Edison would even speak to him, let alone become his business partner. But he had something else, something that Hill called definiteness of purpose, and that thing was more powerful than all the money and connections in the world. Most people, when they imagine a goal like that, focus entirely on the outcome. They picture themselves shaking Edison's hand. They imagine the feeling of being partners, the recognition, the money, the respect. They dream about the ending without ever asking themselves what the middle might cost them. But Edwin Barnes asked himself a very different question. He did not ask, what do I want? He asked, what am I willing to do to get it? And then he did something that sounds almost unreasonable by today's standards. Something that would never make it onto a vision board or into a guided meditation. He bought a ticket on a freight train, not a passenger train, with comfortable seats and warm meals, but a freight train, because that was all he could afford. He rode that train for days, sleeping on wooden floors, eating whatever he could find or do without, until he finally arrived at Edison's laboratory. He did not have an appointment. He did not have a letter of introduction. He simply walked up to a stranger and said, I am here to go into business with Mr. Edison. Most people would have been turned away. Most people were turned away, but Edwin Barnes did not leave. He found a job at the laboratory, any job, sweeping floors, running errands, doing whatever needed to be done. And every single day, while he swept and ran and served, he reminded himself why he was really there. It took him years, not weeks, not months, but years of showing up and staying faithful to a vision that no one else could see. And eventually, Edison needed someone to help launch a new invention, a machine that would record and play back sound, a device called the phonograph. And when Edison looked around for someone who understood his vision, who had proven their loyalty through years of quiet persistence, who would not give up when things got hard, he found Edwin Barnes waiting for him. They went into business together, just as Barnes had imagined all those years ago. And that is the law you have been getting backward. There is a quiet difference between people who dream and people who build, and it is not talent, it is not luck, it is not intelligence or connections or the family they were born into. It is something much simpler and much harder to change. It is how they think about time. Most people think about success as an event, something that happens to them one day, a single dramatic moment when everything finally changes. They imagine the phone call that changes everything, the offer that arrives unexpectedly, the door that swings open after years of knocking. They picture a before and an after, a line in the sand where everything before was waiting and everything after is finally living. And because they think of success as an event, they spend their energy preparing for the event. They visualize the phone call, they rehearse the conversation, they imagine how good it will feel when the offer finally comes. But great achievers think about success very differently. They think about it as a process, a long, slow, often boring process that looks nothing like the highlight reel they show on social media. They understand that the phone call, when it comes, is not the moment of success at all. The success happened in all the quiet moments before the phone call. The mornings they worked when no one was watching, the nights they kept going when every part of them wanted to quit, the small, unglamorous decisions to stay faithful to their purpose even when the results refused to show up on time. Napoleon Hill called this persistence, and he said it was the one quality that could replace almost any other. If you are not naturally talented, persistence can make up for it. If you do not have money, persistence will attract it. If you do not have connections, persistence will create them over time. But here is what most people misunderstand about persistence, and this is important. Persistence is not stubbornness. It is not refusing to change or adapt or learn from failure. True persistence is the quiet ability to hold your purpose completely steady while changing your approach as many times as necessary. Most people give up because they try one approach. It does not work, and they assume the goal was never meant for them. They say things like, "I tried and it didn't work," as if trying once or twice or even 10 times was enough to know something is impossible. Great achievers do something very different. They try one approach, it does not work, and they ask a completely different question. Not should I quit, but what can I learn from this? And that small shift in thinking changes everything. Because failure stops being a stop sign, that red light that tells you to turn around and go home. Failure becomes information, data, a clue about what not to do next time. And every time they fail and keep going, something inside them grows stronger, not louder, not prouder, just quieter, and more certain and more patient. They begin to understand something that most people never understand, that the struggle is not the enemy of success, that the struggle is the path through which success finds you. When you stop running from difficulty and start walking toward it, when you stop asking for an easy path and start asking for the strength to walk a hard one, something shifts, not because the universe is magical, but because you have become a different person, and different people attract different results. This is where everything changes. So let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with this question for a moment before you answer it, because most people rush past questions like this without ever letting them land. Are you ready for what you have been asking for? Not in your imagination, not in your feelings, not in the quiet of your meditation practice when everything feels peaceful and possible and nothing is asking anything of you. Are you ready for it in your bones, in your schedule, in the small daily choices you make when no one is watching and no one would ever know if you took the easy way out? Because wanting something and being ready for something are not the same thing. And that is the law you have been getting backward this whole time. Napoleon Hill did not teach people to sit still and wait for the universe to deliver. He did not teach people to close their eyes and feel good and assume that feeling good was doing the work. He taught them to build a fire inside themselves so hot, so steady, so undeniable that the universe had no choice but to make room for them. He taught that a definite purpose, backed by a practical plan and fueled by persistent action, creates a force that cannot be stopped. Not because the universe is obliging your wishes like a kind parent giving a child what they ask for, but because you have become unstoppable. And unstoppable people do not need the universe to make room for them. They make their own room. So here is the quiet awakening, The truth that no glossy book cover will ever tell you, because it does not sell well and it does not feel good in the moment. Stop manifesting the outcome alone. Start manifesting the person who can handle the outcome, the person who does not crumble when things get hard, the person who keeps going when the vision board feels like a lie you told yourself on a hopeful afternoon, the person who understands that desire without discipline is just disappointment waiting to happen, that wishing without walking is just standing still with a pretty picture in your hands. You do not need to visualize more. You do not need to affirm louder. You do not need to wait for a sign or a synchronicity or a feather on your path. You need to move even a little, even imperfectly, even when you are afraid and unsure and nobody is clapping for you, because movement changes everything. It breaks the spell of waiting, the trance of someday, the comfortable numbness of hoping that something outside of you will eventually rescue you. Movement turns a wish into a direction, and direction held long enough and walked faithfully enough becomes a path. And one day, without any fanfare, without any dramatic music or sudden revelation, you will look up from the work you have been doing, the small, persistent, unglamorous work that nobody saw, and you will see that you have arrived, not because the universe delivered you, not because you manifested correctly, but because you walked there, one hard, imperfect, persistent step at a time. That is the law Napoleon Hill discovered after 20 years of studying the people who actually built something real. That is the law the manifesting gurus quietly forgot to mention. And that is the law that will change everything for you, starting tomorrow morning, when you take one small action toward the thing you say you want, not because you have to be perfect, but because you have finally understood that wishing is not a plan and wanting is not enough, and you are ready for more than that. You always have been.